Thanks for coming to our fourth installment of Film Nevada Workshop. I'm Danette Tull, Deputy Director of Film Nevada. I'm here with Kim and Chrissy, also from our office. And we are excited today to present to you a very special program with the guest speaker, Sav Rodgers, who's going to tell you all about how to stretch that buck, everything you wanted to know about budgeting and all the good stuff you don't have to worry about and compromise your vision. So I'm going to read a little bit about Sav, and I have to get my notes out because he's so impressive. I wanted to capture most of the things. Thrilled to introduce Sav Rodgers, filmmaker, screenwriter, and pop culture documentarian, originally from Kansas, now a proud Las Vegas resident. Sav's feature debut, Chasing Amy, premiered at Tribeca and explores the complicated legacy of the 1997 film Chasing Amy and how it profoundly shaped his own life. That project actually started after his 2018 TED Talk went viral, launching a filmmaking journey focused on bold, authentic stories about queer lives. In recognition of his work, Sav was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 in media. I would just love to get 50 Under 50 at this point. Where was I? Sorry. Received the Dreamer Maker Award from the Cleveland International Film Festival, and most recently was honored by the South by Southwest with the Community Service Award for Film and Television for his leadership with the Transgender Film Center, which he founded to help trans creators bring their stories to screen. He also serves as marketing director at Seed&Spark, the world's leading crowdfunding platform for independent film. Please join me in welcoming the inspiring and very busy Sav Rodgers.
Thanks, friends. Thanks for being here. You could be anywhere on what day is it? Genuinely, Tuesday. So thanks for being here. As Danette very kindly said, I'm Sav. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I am now a proud Las Vegas resident, so I'm stoked to be here with the community. Like Danette said, I'm a working filmmaker, like I would imagine many of you are, or maybe you're at the beginning of your filmmaking journey. I just want to preface this by saying this is very film budgeting 101. So if you've done this 100 times before, we might be going over something that you already know. If you have more advanced questions, we can get to that in the Q&A, but I'm going to assume that everybody here is making a film for the first time. And for that bias, I'm also going to assume that it's a live action short film. All of these are applicable. All of these lessons are applicable regardless of what kind of budget you may have. However, that's probably what you're going to be starting off doing if you are starting off as a filmmaker. So I just want to thank Film Nevada again for having me here today. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any pertinent information before we get started. I've been doing this for 11 years. I'm very happy to be here today. I work with a lot of film festivals. My day job is that I'm at Seed&Spark, but budgeting is my life right now. I'm currently running a crowdfunding campaign for a new film called Pancake Skank, which is a very specific title. It could be either exactly what you're thinking or nothing like what you're thinking. That's the fun of it. But I'm 11 years into my career, and I'm still having to go back to the drawing board with budgeting, figuring out how to do more with less, okay? This new film is very shiny. We have like Lily Wachowski and the Duplass brothers executive producing it, and I'm still trying to figure out how do I triple up locations to avoid company moves, to make sure that our money can go further, we can pay all of our crew, which is very difficult in the year 2025 with the current state of independent film financing. So with that, we're gonna get started here. But first, if you want a copy of this, scan this QR code. So you don't have to scribble down every single thing that you see on a slide. Yes, I will be the one to personally send you this slide deck. So then you will also have my contact information should you want it. Here we go. So what is Seed&Spark? Raise your hand if you've heard of Seed&Spark before. Okay, that's most of you. Great. Well, for the uninitiated, Seed&Spark is the world's leading crowdfunding platform for independent storytelling. What is a crowdfunding platform? It's a place where you can raise money crowdsourcing with your community. So what makes Seed&Spark a filmmaker-friendly option? One, our success rate is super high. It is 84%, meaning 84% of the projects that crowdfund with Seed&Spark get their money. We review each project that is submitted to us before you ever launch your campaign, which means that you are getting a round of feedback from a human being telling you where you can improve, what's working, what's not working. We are giving you feedback based on best practices, and that's something that I really value about Seed&Spark. Additionally, we don't have any platform fees. That's right, you're not only more likely to raise your money on Seed&Spark, you're more likely to keep your money. We do not take a cut of your money. We can't help credit card processing fees. That's what Stripe does. That's what everybody uses. Sorry, but other than that, you keep more of your money. We also have followers and rewards for accumulating followers and backers to your campaign, including film festival waivers, post-production discounts, etc. If you've ever been up at 3 a.m. cutting your own DCP, you will know how valuable it is to have somebody else do it for you. And then lastly, we have our Patron Circle mini grants. This is a super fun way to get extra money for your campaign. We go to our network of people, including Mark Duplass, Jason Reitman. We have them fund projects that are on the platform based on criteria that they want to fund, whether that's LGBTQ stories, first-time directors, etc. So you don't have to apply for this additional money. You just might get it once you hit the 30% mark. And also you get to keep all your money once you hit 80%. So that's what Seed&Spark is for the uninitiated. Let's talk about budgeting. What to expect to pay for. Oh my goodness. Raise of hands. Who's made a film before? Who's directed a film before? Who's produced a film before? Who's been crew on a film? Who is nervous about budgeting? Me. All right, great. We're all aligned here. So these are some of the categories that you should reasonably expect to pay for when you are starting out making your first short film, feature, what have you. So your cast and crew. So if you're good and smart and kind, you are probably going to allocate most of your budget to your cast and crew, the people who are helping you make your movie. For your first, maybe your second short, there will be very kind and talented friends who offer to go without pay, but you should get into the habit of budgeting for people's day rates or for some kind of favored nations rate where everybody's getting paid the same amount of money so that you are showing that you value their time. And this is also often based on experience or what you're able to afford. Some might be willing to negotiate, right? Who's ever had to deal with a sound mixer who charges $1,500 a day? And who tried to get them for an independent film? Me. That is challenging, okay? So you might be able to work with people who are willing to negotiate their day rate based on if they support the project, if they're excited about what you are doing, what you have to say, what the film has to say. A lot of people are going to have a hard and fast day rate. You have to understand that. Now, Vegas is a very competitive market in which people are getting paid a lot of money to do corporate stuff, which sometimes makes independent film difficult to budget for in this market. However, there's a lot of people who do want to work, a lot of people in this room who might be wanting to work with you. There are a lot of events where you can meet people in town, but you have to understand that for somebody working below the line who is making all of their money from acting or being below the line, that's their source of income, that's their money. And so you never want to work with somebody, in my opinion, who is acting like they're doing you a favor. You want to find people who are naturally aligned with what you have to offer, what you have to say, and you want to be able to budget appropriately for that. Great. So next is food. The next most important category is feeding your team, okay? Depending on your shoot schedule, including your call and wrap times, you're likely going to have 2 to 3 meal breaks a day. You want to plan accordingly. You also need to make sure you have enough food and understand that snacks are snacks and meals are meals, okay? A bag of chips is not a lunch for somebody, please. Make sure that you have your craft services appropriately allocated over on the craft services table, and make sure you're budgeting appropriately to make sure that you can feed everybody. This is literally the bare minimum, is feeding your team, even if everybody is volunteering their time. Next, props, wardrobe, production design, basically every inanimate object that you see on screen, somebody has to source from somewhere. Sometimes that costs money. As a director, you might have a vision for how this translates from script to screen when you see it in a script versus what you want to bring to life. And if you have the budget, you might have an art director, a production designer, but worst case scenario, you can do this, especially if you're starting out. Learning how to do great production design is a great way to cut your teeth, but also to learn a skill that you can get paid for, okay? I remember very early on in my filmmaking career, the movie, who's seen the movie American Honey? Okay, we've got some people with taste in this house. It's a very early A24 film directed by Andrea Arnold, and they rolled through Kansas City for 3 days back when I lived there. And I got to be like an intern, which meant I was in the mansion that they were filming in, and I was told to make sure they don't scratch the floors, which they didn't need me for that. So they just stuck me in the art department. I learned so much in the 3 days on the art department for that movie that have become invaluable skills that I've taken with me everywhere. So if you can learn a trade, production design is a great thing to do. It's going to make your work better to understand what is in a scene, how does something live in a scene. Now, if you don't have, a production designer, you can do this job. You can do this with your producer. It's going to make your work better. If you don't have a wardrobe stylist who can curate the outfits of the main characters and approve the outfits of your background talent, you may have to do that yourself. This is something that you can do yourself. Just make sure that you have a tracking system for it, which we're going to get into what tracking systems look like later in the presentation, often in the form of a Google Sheet, Excel spreadsheet, a collaborative document that everybody can be in. Okay, this is a long slide, y'all. Apologies for this. Let's talk gear and equipment next. So next to cast and crew, this usually takes up most of an indie filmmaking budget. Now, you might be lucky and have somebody who has, an Arri Alexa or a camera package that you might want, and they might be willing to give it to you for free. But more often than not, especially for crew that depend on productions as their means of income, if they own their own gear, they're going to have a rental rate associated with it. Okay, again, you want to make sure that you're finding something that is aligned in your budget. You might look on ShareGrid. You might look on Facebook groups. You might be able to source somebody through, you might find a name that you like in the, the Nevada production guide put on by the Film Nevada here, which if you don't know about that, I'm sure that Danette would be happy to talk about that in the Q&A, but you might find somebody who has their own crew or has their own gear, and you are just going to have to. Sorry, the mic is getting louder as I'm talking. You have to understand that there's going to be a rental in association with the labor fee. So make sure you can budget for that. Worst case scenario, you probably have a 4K camera in your pocket though, and figure out how to make it work. One of the best movies I've seen in years is Louise Ward's movie called Castration Movie. It is who's heard of Dogma 95? Okay, Dogma 95, basically a film movement where they had a bunch of rules for what they were going to do and not do. And one of those was that basically everything had to be shot digitally. And so my friend Louise, she has a camcorder. She does this improv style movie. This movie is 5 hours. It is the first part, it's 5 hours. They are selling out screenings across the country doing this cult movie, okay? You don't need an Alexa to make a great movie. You need a camera that suits what the vision is for your story. And so as you are budgeting for your rentals, as you are budgeting for your gear, you should ask, what is necessary to tell the story the way that this story needs to be told? If you're doing an Edgar Wright style action comedy flick, you might need a really shiny camera package and at the very least some great lenses to reflect that. But if you have something that can be told in a very specific personal point of view, see what you might have. See what you can offer in terms of your point of view. It'll save you a lot of money than figuring that out in post-production after you spent $10,000 to shoot a short film that you actually probably just needed $2,000 to do. So, next thing is locations. Okay, this is where you can also call on the film office, okay? Please wave film office friends, hello. You can call them for location assistance. This is a free service that they offer the community. Now, if you're lucky, you can get locations offered as in-kind contributions to a project. If you are lucky, that often requires building rapport with who runs the location. Are you kind? Are you decent? Are you willing to offer them something of value where they would give you a location in kind? You can't expect that, but you can always try to negotiate. But you always want to offer this in good faith. Otherwise, you're going to want to need to account for any location fees, which you may need to talk to the Las Vegas Film Commission here, or the Film Nevada, and specifically what's happening in Las Vegas to figure out what permits you might need, what location fees are associated with that. It can cost a lot to shut down a business for a day during prime hours. So figure out, can you shoot outside of their normal work hours? Do you have to pay a location to have an employee there to monitor things while you are shooting there? Or can you fake a location somewhere else, which we're going to talk about in a bit. All right. third to last thing, transportation. You have to account for how people are getting to and from set, okay? If somebody doesn't have a car, they may have to take a bus, right? For talent, they might ask if you're willing to cover their Uber costs, right? Figure out what is transportation realistically going to cost for the stakeholders that you would like to have on set. You may also need a rental van, okay? You might need a grip truck. You might need somebody who can transport gear back and forth very specifically. All of the gear that you spent a bunch of money on, that's very precious. Make sure that it's safely getting to and from set. Second to last thing, pre-production. This is always forgotten, but keep in mind that you might have prep meetings. You might have costs associated with doing a table read. You might need to rent a conference room here in the library. So make sure that you were budgeting appropriately for common spaces that you'll be using, etc. And then lastly, contingency. Shit always hits the fan, y'all. Shit always hits the fan. I recommend a baseline of starting at looking at a 10% contingency fee in your budget. You may need more depending on what you're doing. You may need less, but I would always try to have a 10% pad in there somewhere, because if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Okay, now let's talk about script breakdowns. All right, that's a funny little dance move. All right, so let's talk about a high-level breakdown. Here's what a high-level script breakdown could look like, using the example from my colleague Megan Ross's first short film, An Uncomfortable Woman. Now, this script breakdown will tell you what you're responsible for to set up this scene. If you don't have the budget for it, you're going to have to figure out a way to obtain the look you're going for or make cuts, which we should also talk about. Now, let's talk about the categories of columns to include here. Okay, number one is location. Where does the scene take place? Is there more than one location for this sequence in the script? These are questions you should ask yourself. Interior versus exterior. Is it inside or outside, people? This is very important for your grip and electric team. This is very important for your camera team. This is also very important for your location breakdown and also the costs of doing something. I'm not here to encourage this, but stealing a shot outside versus shooting somewhere inside, those are different costs associated with that. Also, time of day. That is also important for G&E to know. Are you lighting for day or for night? Does the scene take place during the day or at night? Are you having to shoot day for night? Are you having to black out windows to make sure that it looks like it's nighttime outside? This is all very important. Cast, also, knowing if your leads or supporting characters are there on a specific day. Are you putting scenes together that make sense based off of an actor's day rate? Background players, okay? If you have day players with one line or background talent, how many of them do you need? That can be expensive if you're compensating them. Additionally, props and wardrobe. What should the cast be wearing in the scene? What items need to appear on screen? And then lastly, your notes section. Anything related to the scene's breakdown that you need to keep in mind, whether that's production design notes, location notes, etc., etc. Okay, so we're gonna start by just looking at your locations. Okay, exterior, lake house. We are outside of the lake house, and then we are inside of the lake house. Now, depending on your situation, if you have somebody who's willing to let you shoot outside but not inside, you might be able to fake that movie magic later. Okay, who likes sitcoms? I think that should be everybody, but yes. Okay, you know how on a sitcom they'll have the exterior shot of the full house, and then suddenly you're inside, and it's a much bigger set on the inside than it looks like on the outside? I fully suspend my disbelief anytime I watch a sitcom. I always assume that that is the real place that they are shooting, and that when they go up the stairs, it's not a set that runs out, that they are actually going to the second floor. I fully buy into that. Now, the beauty of film is that your audience may also buy into that. If you have to shoot your exterior and your interior somewhere else, you can account for that. Maybe you only have location to a room inside of an apartment, but you can get a beautiful exterior somewhere. You just can't go and scratch their floors. You have options, you can be creative, and you can use what's at your disposal here. Next, you need to break down who your characters are. So for An Uncomfortable Woman, Dylan, the uncomfortable woman in question, is the only person in the scene. That makes that much cheaper to shoot. So keep in mind when you are writing your scripts, the more characters that you write, the more expensive that will be, the more talent you have to compensate. That's why people always try to give you the advice of, if you can write two characters in a room talking, right? Which doesn't feel terribly exciting as a writer sometimes, but can be very effective for you as a producer. Figure out what's the happy medium version of that as you were figuring out your voice, as you were getting started. Okay, next, all of the props. So there's There's a ton of props here. We've got several bags. That's very vague. You can decide as the production designer what you want to do here. Wedding invites, a bottle of wine, wine glass, cell phone, package, broken picture frame, therapy book, dead plant. These are all things that are literally in the script. You might find when you get to set that some of these things are redundant and you don't actually need them on the day. Be really decisive. Don't be afraid to make those cuts. If all of those are important to the scene, great. But otherwise, you might just be overwriting because you're really into the world, and when you get to set, it might be something different. Okay. So that's an example of what it can look like for the script breakdown. After your high-level breakdown, you can add tabs to your Google Sheets with category-specific breakdowns. You might not need every column here, but these are some examples to include for a more detailed location breakdown. And I would always ask the question, can you combine things to save money, right? So if you, for example, have your location breakdown, and you're finding that there's one scene in particular where it's just like a slow push in on someone's face, right? And you can production design the hell out of the background, you can make it seem like it's somewhere else. You might be able to just shoot that in another location that you readily have access to. That is the beauty of movie magic. You don't always literally need the location that you wrote in the script to make people believe that you have that location. I'll never forget one of my first short films. I remember we were at our Q&A at Slam Dance, and we had stolen a shot of somebody getting on a city bus. And there was somebody in the audience that was like, how did you get the budget for that bus? And I was like, oh man, I made you believe we had the budget for a bus. I have really done my job today. So don't be afraid to lean into a little bit of the movie magic, the mystery. I'm not encouraging stealing shots, Danette and Kim, I'm not encouraging that, but sometimes you do what you gotta do. So let's talk about casting real quick. One of the things that people love to do is write really busy crowd scenes, okay? You want something to live fully in the world. Who watched the movie Trap by M. Night Shyamalan? Okay, can you please point out where they were in that movie? What was the location? They were in a stadium. They were in a stadium tour, okay? If you were making your first short film, you probably cannot do a Taylor Swift era-style stadium tour as your location. And I'm sorry, I'll stop moving around for the cameras. I'm sorry you're having to track me. You have to consider when you're writing a scene, how many background people would it take to convincingly make this work? You do not have the resources of Disney probably to populate an entire stadium full of people with fake digital artifacting, et cetera, et cetera. So figure out, what do I realistically need to make a scene work? I remember I did a short film. I shot it in, I think, 2017, and we were at a drag bar. And it was going really great until I realized how many extras we would need to realistically make it look like it was a Friday night at a drag bar. And we were able to make, 10 people feel like 30 people with a lot of camera trickery. But you have to be really realistic about that because you also got to pay those people. You got to make sure that they feel understood, that they're, being respected on set, et cetera, et cetera. You can also cheat a shot to make it look or sound like you're in a busy restaurant. You can use something like shooting over the shoulder to make it feel like a little more crowded in there to create that claustrophobia of being in a busy restaurant. You can use sound design and post-production to help with that. You'd be surprised, you'd be surprised at what you're able to do with just a little bit of movie magic. Okay, now, moving on, props and production design. Okay, so the same rule applies. Where can you save money? I think there are 4 questions that you should ask yourself specifically when it comes to props and production design. 4 categories to consider. What do you have? What can you make? What can you borrow? And what can you buy? Though buying is obviously the most expensive answer, but something that we love at Seed&Spark is that we really lean into what can you find from your community? What can you source from your community? Does your friend have access to a car that you need as an invaluable part of your script? Did they have a jacket that looks sick that would be great on camera? But also, maybe I'm an old head now, but Facebook has these buy nothing groups where you can just trade things with people, and they just are in there to trade stuff with other people. They're like, I don't need these Pokemon cards anymore. Does someone have Magic the Gathering? Or, hey, I don't want this car anymore. I want to get a motorcycle. Would somebody be willing to trade this classic car for a motorcycle? Some people just want to see things go to a nice home. They don't want environmental waste. You'd be surprised what people are willing to give away for free. So join these buy nothing groups. It will literally cost you nothing. Okay. And then hair wardrobe columns are also invaluable. So it's very similar to what we've been talking about. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but consider what, depending on your budget, what can your talent bring to set if they're non-union? Keep in mind for union talent, there's a day rate associated with any stuff that they have to bring from home. But I was just talking to a director who's a Sundance fellow, and she worked with this I would say high B-list actor over the summer on a project, and she just asked her on a whim, hey, you'd be perfect for this role in this independent documentary that I'm doing. It's it's comedic, and this person who is married to an A-list person was like, okay, you want me to bring wardrobe from home? And she was like, that would be helpful. And she's like, great, I will bring exactly the outfit that you need. So even somebody at that level is often game to play if they're really into the story. So don't be afraid to ask where you need it. Just know that for union talent, there might be a fee associated with them, bringing their own wardrobe, but they might have something that's perfect. Don't let your fear of asking get in the way of telling a great story and doing it collaboratively. Your actor wants to show up and be the best version of that character. Your production designer wants to show up and be the best version of that production designer, and so don't be afraid to ask where you don't have something. So that's pretty much that. Okay, moving on. Stunts. Let's talk about stunts and effects real quick. Anything that is not standing, basically, can be considered a stunt through the right lens. Stunts add time, and time is money, and anything that's not standing or sitting pretty can be considered a stunt to some degree, like a walk and talk scene. If you have a Steadicam operator who is having to follow you, if you have a Steadicam operator that's having to follow you, if you have somebody on a skateboard, if you have something, there's a level of coordination that's involved, and it's going to add some time to your day at the very least. So don't overload any one specific day with stunts, and make sure that you have a stunt coordinator to make it super safe. So I remember I was working on a short film in 2019, and it was a guy falling off his skateboard. And I thought the actor was just I was producing it. I thought the actor was just gonna fall off his skateboard. He's like, no, I would like a stunt coordinator. And so that scene, I'm not kidding you, took 4 hours to shoot. Part of that was because it was a first-time director who, wanted to make sure that it looked realistic enough. And so we spent a ton of time on that scene, but that stunt coordinator certainly got his money's worth just watching this dude fall on a pad all day. So make sure that you have the appropriate amount of time and budget to bring in any necessary folks. Okay, other considerations. Animals. If you have an animal on set, famously, you're going to need a handler or a holding area. For kids, you need a legal guardian. If you're shooting narrative and it's during the school day or something like that, you're going to need an on-set tutor. Gear, craft services, post-production, festivals, and distribution costs. These are all things that cost money that people never think of. Okay, I cannot tell you how many people I have met in my career who don't think about how much an editor costs until they have the film in the can, and then suddenly they're crowdfunding for post-production, and they weren't thinking about that. Okay, craft services. Food is going to cost some money. Gear is going to cost money. And festivals. Let's talk about festivals for a second. Who's played at a film festival? Who wants to play at a film festival? Who has big dreams that involve getting great distribution for your film? Okay, if you haven't raised your hand at any of that, I have questions. But in terms of other considerations, festivals can cost a lot of money, okay? I'm trying to think of a number that I'm allowed to say. You can easily spend $4,000, $5,000 just submitting to film festivals without ever getting in. That is what's called a spray and pray idea, folks, okay? A spray and pray strategy for film festivals is going to waste your time, it's going to waste the festival's time, and it's going to cost you too much money. So whenever you are considering your festival strategy, you want to create a plan. You want to be researched. You want to look at other festival programs, okay? So if you look at the statistics of who's getting programmed from submissions at Sundance, you are probably seeing that there are 15,000 submissions to Sundance a year, and 100 films get in across all their programs. Might not be a great use of your money for your first film to submit to Sundance. Now, if you don't submit, you don't get in, sure. But statistically, your money may be spent better elsewhere submitting to a market film festival. For example, Cannes has no submission fee. There's no submission fee to submit to Cannes, arguably the biggest film festival in the world. That might be a good use of your time and money, but even still, you should be checking out the program to see, well, does Cannes program a film like mine? Are they interested in films like mine? Are they interested in the types of things I'm trying to say? Are there programmers in that team that seem interested in what I am trying to do? You know, I'm on the advisory board, the filmmaker advisory board for South by Southwest. I can tell you what makes a South by Southwest film. If you are not doing something that's within the realm of what makes a South by Southwest film, though, it might not make sense to submit. That's a high submission fee. And so anytime that you are submitting to a film festival, this is a quick bonus knowledge. One, identify your purpose, right? What is your purpose with this film? What do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of that film festival experience? Number two, is your film aligned with said film festival? Do they program films like yours? It does not make sense to submit a non-queer film to a queer film festival, for example. They are programming queer films, and they are programming for a queer audience specifically. You would not submit your, a buddy comedy to a horror film festival if there were no horror elements to it. So do your research, don't just spray and pray. And then lastly, try to only submit to film festivals you intend on actually going to in person. If you would not try to submit, if you would not try to go to the festival in person, what is the purpose of trying to get in, right? So if you want to play at Cordillera, you want to go up to Reno to do that, but you have no intention on going, well, why would you spend the money to do that? The whole purpose of film festivals is to connect with community, to screen your film for an audience, to help build your audience, and to do it for much cheaper than it would cost to four-wall the theater that they are in. Four-walling is the process of paying for your film to play in a specific venue or theater. So, when you're doing your festival submissions, be really intentional about it. I can't tell you how much it breaks my heart to hear when people have just spent so much money because they were hoping to get a result that was not aligned with reality. Lastly, distribution costs. Distribution costs so much money. Okay, you are paying for DCPs, you are paying for captioning, you are paying for color timing, your sound design, all of that to be, mastered in 5.1 and whatever the specs are for your distributor. So make sure that you have a list of the things you need from the beginning so you can do some planning at the beginning. So if you want to align with what Netflix's deliverables list is, you can find that on the internet. But you also, that's not the end of the world if you're not going to have a Netflix film. Statistically, none of us are going to have a Netflix film. That doesn't mean that we don't want to have high production standards. So do your research ahead of time. I'm going to give you a resource right now that's going to help your distribution journey. It is called The Distribution Playbook. Go to thedistributionplaybook.com. This is an open source educational tool that Seed&Spark and our friends at Kinema have made for free to walk you through the current landscape of everything happening in distribution, good, bad, and ugly. This is updated on a quarterly basis because we don't want you to get screwed over in your distribution process. So whether you are self-releasing or you are getting, a six-figure, Hulu deal, it doesn't matter. This is a tool that will help you in the long run. So thedistributionplaybook.com. All right. So here's an example of a final budget here, color-coded with, and also there's a key here with the production breakdown costs. This was a very inexpensive budget comparatively. So in total, they spent less than $4,000 to make this short film. You should be really specific about your budget. And we're going to talk about your expected budget versus your working budget real quick. So does anybody know what an expected budget is before we get into it? Okay, who knows what an actual budget is? Great, everybody's going to learn something. Okay, so your expected budget is your quoted cost, what you anticipate the movie is going to cost. It's your estimate. It is sometimes guesswork because you might not know the specifics of a particular situation. Your working budget is your actual cost, what you have paid for and what it actually costs to make the thing you were making. It's helpful to see what costs more or less than what you anticipated when you're planning for your next film, but also as you're doing your audit on this film. Tracking both is going to help you how to budget budget better each time. So even if you're ashamed with how your working budget is different than or your expected budget is different than your working budget, that's okay. This is all for you to learn, and it's going to make you a sharper, better filmmaker in the long run to be able to track both of those things. So this is what I do for my films. I do all of my budgets in a Google Sheet, because what I want is to be able to access it at every time without it being behind a paywall. So there are things like Movie Magic budgeting. There are different types of budgeting softwares out there. I like to have a hands-on approach where I can edit this at any time, or another producer can do this, and they don't have to pay whatever license is necessary to access it. And then I have 2 tabs. I create my expected budget, and then I will duplicate it once we start paying for things, and I will duplicate the tab, and I will then have my working budget, and I will update the working budget with how much things actually cost. So my new film, I'm anticipating it's going to cost about $75,000 all in to make, and I'm very excited to see if that's actually how much it cost. I'm trying to come in under that, but we're also trying to pay everybody for a 5-day shoot on a favored nation's rate. So most of the budget I know we're going to spend on people, but I want to know, were we able to get locations a little cheaper? Were we able to save money by having like home cooked meals? Where we have like, people who are willing to do, like potlucks and stuff for us. We're doing night shoots. We can't go to McDonald's at 5 a.m. In New Jersey, apparently. I'm learning a lot. So have your expected budget and your working budget. You'll be so happy you did as you continue to budget for your future films. Okay, let's talk about things that cost more than you think. This is a fun game. So number 1, transportation. But if you have, let's say you have a shoot that wraps late and public transit is no longer available, right? Let's say you're, shooting in New Jersey and somebody needs to get back to New York. You're going to have to pay the $250 Uber for them to get back to New York, okay? Transportation can always cost more money than you think. Train tickets, airfare, stuff like that. Make sure that you are budgeting appropriately there. Food. You should be breaking for a meal at minimum every 6 hours. You can always go to Costco for Crafty, and if you don't have a Costco membership, you can always borrow a friend's membership or sign up for the $60 a year that it costs. You need a balance between healthy, energy-boosting food as well as some sweets, depending on what you are trying to do. And also, if you do not drink coffee like me, I cannot emphasize enough how much people really hate when you don't get them coffee. So please make sure to budget for coffee. Crew kits. Your sound recordist might have their own kit, or they're going to invoice you for whatever they rented, plus batteries. G&E may have a kit, but your hair and makeup person is typically going to have a kit fee associated with their work in addition to their day rate. So make sure you're budgeting for kit fees appropriately. And if you don't know, you can always ask. You can always ask the internet. You can always ask your film commission. What do people typically charge? You can ask me. You'll have my email after this. Don't be a stranger. Then your crowdfunding incentives. Okay, who's ever crowdfunded before? Okay, and who is stressed out by the delivering of incentives on crowdfunding campaigns? Me. I work at a crowdfunding company and I find it stressful. Take it from me. Try not to spend money on your crowdfunding incentives as much as possible. It'll also help you save on shipping. Merch can often cost more for you to make than it is for what you're going to make off of it. So don't assume you're going to have a big fan base for your project initially. But if you're going to have physical incentives, make sure you're budgeting appropriately and that it's not just going to be an added overall cost that's actually going to sink your budget. Okay, next, gear rentals. Try to have 3 versions of your gear list: your must-haves, your nice-to-haves, and then your super nice-to-haves. Things that you definitely need to be successful shooting this. Next is production insurance. Oh my God, I cannot tell you how much people freak out about production insurance, okay? Ask your local filmmakers to see if they already have it. Work with a production company that has it already. Ask for what quotes that people have gotten for theirs. You do need this. You need to be able to provide a COI anytime you rent something. Yes, it's scary to think about insurance. It's a pain in the ass, I know, but you do need production insurance and you need to budget for it. Also, time. A 10-hour versus a 12-hour day may have a very different day rate for somebody. And beyond 10 hours might be overtime for some crew, and they might start charging you time and a half. Additionally, carelessness is something that you might have to pay more for. If a G&E team rushes to put away a piece of gear and it breaks and you don't have insurance, you're going to be on the hook for that. Now, let's talk about some of the worst things that cost so much money, post-production edition. Music licensing, people. This is the most stressful thing I've ever come across in any part of the filmmaking process. Music licensing costs so much money. Unless you know the artist personally and they're willing to not be paid for their work, it's going to cost you a bunch of money. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to license worldwide, in perpetuity, across the universe, which means in all territories, forever, in all mediums, okay? If you can't, you will have to break up licensing into your festival circuit and public screenings, and then go back to renew for your online premiere or streaming. When you're dealing with bigger artists, you're also gonna have to deal with master and publishing fees. I can't tell you how many filmmakers I know who have been screwed over because they could afford the festival and the public screenings costs, but they could not afford for the regular distribution costs. So music licensing is basically assuming that every film has a ton of money to do this, right? So if you're Barbie, you can afford to license whatever song you want. You're Greta Gerwig and you call Justin Timberlake and say, hey, thanks for Cry Me a River and Lady Bird. Would you like to have a song on the Barbie soundtrack? They'll be like, yeah. And then Warner Brothers is like, yes, we would love a Justin Timberlake song and we will pay the money associated with it and everybody's happy. But if you're an independent artist and you get some of the quotes back for what it would cost to use Can't Stop the Feeling and you're calling Sony or whoever has Justin Timberlake's music, and they say, oh, that's going to be $30,000. And that's on the cheap side. Absolutely brutal. Please do not get addicted to your temp music that you are editing to in your DaVinci Resolve window or your Premiere Pro window. It's going to break your heart when you can no longer have the song that you actually want that costs so much money. On Chasing Amy, we licensed one song. And it was a song called Jumpstart that was used in Chasing Amy back in 1997. No film ever used this song again. Nobody else wants this song. And I could not believe the amount of money we still had to pay for this song that nobody else wanted but us. And it's a great song, and I love the song, and I'm very thankful to Brian Teague for letting us have the song. But it was a lot of money for a very small independent documentary. And so we were happy to pay it to them, specifically the artist, and we didn't have to deal with masters or publishing fees. But if you want a song on a major label, you want Taylor Swift, forget about it. Not saying you can't dream big. You could write her a letter. You can write any of these artists a letter at any time being like, this is what it would mean to me to have this song, and it can pay off. But don't get addicted to your temp music. It will break your heart every time. Okay, next, ADR. Who knows what ADR is? Okay, great. That's everybody. Okay, ADR, determined after your sound mixer does a pass. It can also include any of your voiceover you plan to record in post-production. So on my next film, we have an entire character who's just a voiceover, right? We're already paying for the ADR. We're already paying for the mix session. So that's not going to cost us anything extra. Try to negotiate that ahead of time with your post team if you can, okay? Also, color correction. Oh, my God. Color correction can cost so much money. Who knows what color correction is? Okay, everybody knows what color correction is. Great. Okay. It can cost so much money, okay? Post houses sometimes love to inflate the cost of what your post-production color timing is going to cost. If you can work directly with a colorist, that can often be better. But you have to understand that this is an entire discipline and they are there to make your movie look beautiful and professional. So please don't try to undercut your colorists. People often try to do this. They make sure that your color looks correct and doesn't look ridiculously insane. It also can help you account for different skin tones if you shot on different cameras to make it all look like one cohesive unit, okay? We shot most of Chasing Amy on the C300 Mark II from Canon. There were a lot of scenes, though, where we did not have that available, and so we had to shoot on a Sony camera, a Z-Cam. We had an Alexa as our B-Cam on that movie, and she made it all. Esme Rogers-Smith, our beautiful colorist on that movie, did an incredible job making it look like one camera shot almost everything except one scene that we both hated because the color was baked in and we had nothing else. So, and we both commiserate about that to this day. Okay, additionally, film festival submissions. I just went on a whole diatribe about it, but plan in advance, know when to, when the early bird submission deadlines are and how to save money. Some festivals will offer discounts. If you can't afford, you might be able to reach out for a waiver. Let's talk about festival waivers for a second. Who's ever asked for a film festival waiver? Who got said festival waiver they asked for? Okay, that's good. Some people will say it doesn't hurt to ask for film festival waivers. I say it absolutely can hurt to ask for festival waivers depending on how you ask. Because when you ask for a waiver, what you are effectively asking is for every other filmmaker who submits to subsidize the cost of your submission. Which when you think about it, it's like, oh, that is a bigger ask than I thought. Festival waivers can be great. Some programmers just hand them out like candy. The Transgender Film Center, we have a festival waiver program that has not been announced in the trades yet, but we just got Tribeca on board to give free waivers out to trans filmmakers, which is amazing. I'm so excited about it. But sometimes when you one-on-one ask for a festival waiver to a programmer, and you didn't read the part of their website that says, we don't do that, or if you would like a waiver, please fill out this form. Make sure that you are doing your research and approaching these folks in the ways that they would like to be asked, because you are ultimately asking them for a favor. I gotta say, some people can ask and come off really entitled. So when you ask for a waiver, explain your reason. Hey, I'm so sorry, I would love to submit to your film festival, and here's why. And not because you were programmed somewhere impressive. They don't care if you premiered at Sundance, okay? They don't care about any of that. What they care about is, why do you want to submit to them, and why should you get to jump the line and not have to submit, right? And I think you need a compelling reason where it's like, hey, I looked at your program. I think that this film could be really great for this festival because we're aligned with X, Y, and Z reason. We also love your program. We've always wanted to play here. We're a very small team, and so we understand if you don't give us a waiver, but we're running out of money we're out of money for festival submissions, and because we didn't have much money to begin with. If you're honest and you're real and you're not giving them bullshit, you might be surprised that people are gonna actually abide by this. But respect when somebody says no. Don't throw a temper tantrum. Don't send an email being like, well, this festival did it, because then you're just gonna validate why they didn't give you a waiver in the first place. So respect when you get the no, but you can ask sometimes, and it can pay off depending. And then lastly, on hard drives, have a backup for your backup for your backup. It's always good to have hard drives. Okay, now here's an example of a bad budget. Now, a bad budget can be very fun. This is from my friend Bree, who graciously loaned us this budget for this. But you can see that we have some fun things here, including charges that effed us without being that helpful. That's $165.65 there, okay? There's a lot of stuff that they didn't even need, and they tracked that so they would know not to do it next time. But here's a fun one. Let's see. Adapters that didn't work, $32.56. Track that shit. You will be so much happier. But one of these things is an iPhone specific lav mic, okay? $141.96. Okay, there's a lot of things that probably don't make sense here in this budget. Over budget by $266, spending on stuff that Bree did not actually need. So when I say track your budget, it's gonna be helpful for you to track the things that you did not do well so you can avoid those mistakes last time and save all your receipts. Maybe you'll be able to get your money back on some of this. Okay, lastly, not lastly, getting close to the end here. We're going to talk about COVID cost considerations. I think Danette and Kim would be able to speak to this better, but a lot of people still have COVID considerations. A lot of people still wear masks on set. And so at the very least, I think what we learned from the pandemic is we need to be washing our hands more. We need to be considerate of our personal space. We need to not be coming to work sick. We need to take care of ourselves. And also having things like hand sanitizer. I don't think we're ever going to go back to not having that, right? It's just basic, polite, have soap by the sink. I think we've all been on location and we went to the bathroom and then suddenly there was no soap by the sink and we're like, I feel gross now, okay? So have PPE for your cast and crew. Having a COVID compliance officer can still be very helpful. Again, you don't want people to get sick, and I think I've gotten COVID 3 times this year from film festivals. That's on me. That's on me. But I get the booster. I get sick very easily. I get run down very easily, okay? So make sure that you are creating an environment where people do not need to get sick. Also, keeping craft services COVID friendly. I remember being on a set where there was like a big bag of chips and everyone's like grubbing on it all together. The individual snack bags, we don't need to go back to the big collective bag of grubby chips, okay? We can all have our individual snack bags. And then also minimizing the number of cast and crew that are needed for each shoot day. It's gonna make that take more time to shoot, but be really intentional about who you're hiring. Don't just say everybody has a free-for-all to come on set. Every person who's on set, you are responsible for their safety, for them being fed, for them being paid. And so I think being really intentional about who's on set is going to be helpful to you anyway. And then again, having a dedicated holding room with windows, sunlight, fresh air, the ability to go outside, that can all be very helpful. And also just like personal space. We don't need to be right up in each other's grills all the time. Okay, let's talk about killing your darlings real quick, okay? You want to be creative but realistic. It's better to overestimate than underestimate when it comes to your budget. Give yourself that cushion. Give yourself that room to breathe. Okay, now, let's talk about how to save money before killing your darlings, okay? So can you look at local small business support? Can you make it valuable for any people who you would want to partner with on a project that you are doing, okay? Can you make it worth their time and energy to want to partner with you? We talk about all this all the time when it comes to partnership, where people are like, well, what can they give me? When you are approaching a local business and asking them for a subsidized rate on something, whether that's a location or catering or something, you have to think about, why would these people want to be in business with you? What are you offering to be of value to them? That is how you build community. And again, respect if they say no. Borrow from your community, okay? People in this room, do you have resources that you can offer each other? Can you do a no spending situation? Can you barter with each other? Can you go guerrilla sometimes? Again, not doing anything that's unsafe, but can you do more with less? Can you make that Dogma 95 style film that is going to resonate with people? Be intentional. Okay, in terms of decreasing your locations budget, you can always combine, aka cheating locations. You can prioritize, making sure you have your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves. You can sometimes utilize stock footage. That can often be funnier. Who has seen Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar? Okay, who remembers the seagull scene when they're talking about the seagulls? Okay, I'm going to need everybody to go home and watch Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. This is unacceptable. This is an incredible piece of cinema that everybody should see. Sometimes when you use stock footage, it can be used for like comedic effect, right? You're paying somebody for their labor, sure, but it's like Too Many Cooks. Who's seen Too Many Cooks? Oh my God. Okay. Stressing me out here, folks. Okay. Sometimes when you use an exterior shot that definitely doesn't match the interior, like when we're talking about sitcoms, that can be funnier. So stock footage I would specifically recommend for comedy sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do. But you don't have to use stock footage if you don't want to. It's just an option. And then lastly, you can cut locations. Okay, is it crucial to the scene? Can you shoot it at home? I just had to do that on one of my films. We were going to have a character be reflecting on something in his bedroom, and I was like, I kind of like the idea that we don't see where anybody lives in this movie. And, the idea that everybody's kind of perpetually in motion, almost everybody's transient. And so we just set that, with him walking down the street, he sits on the curb, and then suddenly, this revelation comes to him in this like very funny way. We didn't have to use an additional location, a public street we already have the permits for. And so, and we're already going to be shooting it near a location that we already have access to. That solved a lot of problems for us. The only thing that we have to consider is like, okay, what's outside going to sound at night around here? And we're doing scouts to make sure that we can be specific and intentional about that. Okay. Some ways to cheat one location as two. Again, this is very 101 here, people, but I'm telling you, swapping cushions and bedding can be very helpful depending on what you're trying to do. Rearranging a room's layout, avoiding shooting windows, okay? The windows are always the dead giveaway of if you're cheating a location as more than one place. Can you distinguish or differentiate through different production design choices? Can you utilize different lighting? Can you emphasize a tight shot to make it feel like you're at a party or something like that? There's lots of things that you can do to make one location feel like two, and sometimes three. And then additionally, the four main things that we're going to talk about with decreasing the props budget: ask, make, fake, or cut. I need a very specific looking boombox for my next film. And I was talking to our costume designer who works on Broadway. Like she's done every interesting show for the last 30 years to some degree. Like Moulin Rouge is a recurring thing that she has to do. She was one of the original people to do Cats on Broadway. She's had a very long, storied career. And I was like, well, I gotta find this boombox. She's like, oh, we can fake that. That's easy. Like, as long as you don't need it to actually play any sound, we can fake that very easy. With just stuff she has in her workshop. So ask and ye shall receive sometimes. Okay, let's talk about unions. So we love unions. We love people who were protecting our jobs as film workers. But SAG is always a scary thing to hear as an independent filmmaker because it's often the first union that an independent filmmaker will work with. So understanding how to work with SAG quickly, there are SAG minimums for which people need to be paid and respected, okay? You need to start your paperwork early. I cannot tell you that the earlier you start doing this, the better you will feel. You need to stick to shooting guidelines. You need to have additional talent compensation sometimes. Like if you go over a certain number of hours, you might owe time and a half, which starts to get very expensive. Oftentimes there are royalties. I will say with the current streaming ecosystem, royalties are something that are unfortunately paid out less and less. But you want to make sure that you have contracts that address these things that are aligned with SAG paperwork. Okay, actors get screwed over so much, we don't need to contribute to that problem. And then lastly, SAG Indie. If you are afraid to work with SAG, SAG Indie is an incredible resource to be able to work with union actors, with people who can walk you through the process, hold your hand, and make you feel really good about it. We love SAG Indie. My friend Eliza Hakova is one of the people over there. She works with filmmakers all the time so that people can start feeling comfortable working with union talent, these incredible actors, and doing it in a way that feels great. Okay, hold on. So let's talk. This is our last slide here, okay? How do we talk about money? This is the perennial question. This is the thing that stresses every single filmmaker I know out to some degree, myself included. And I have to talk about money all the time as a producer, as somebody who fundraises for the Transgender Film Center, as somebody who secures sponsorships for Seed&Spark, and as somebody who is just generally trying to get through the world. We have to be able to talk about money and feel comfortable doing it. In crowdfunding, in pitching investors, in talking about budgeting, it's not about the money. It's what the money gets you. It's what it affords you to be able to do. So paying your cast and crew an equitable wage, more shooting days, cooler wardrobe, better locations, okay? This is the stuff that being able to talk about money can set free for you. Or sometimes you just have a film that represents a group of people that didn't know that they could exist on screen. Sometimes you're breaking ground. That is what money can afford you, and that's what being able to conquer your budget can really afford you. And so this was our 101 level version of this, but this is just a starting place. You're gonna figure out your own ways to budget, you're gonna figure out your own ways to level up, and you're gonna be able to do it really beautifully. And so I just wanna thank everybody for being here today, for taking the time to listen, and excited to get into the Q&A and talk about some questions. So thanks for having me, y'all. Yeah, so let's talk about what is film distribution. Film distribution, or distribution of any kind, is the process of getting your film out to an audience. And so distribution takes a lot of different forms. So a lot of people will call film festivals festival distribution, which can actually be a profitable window for a film or a project, depending on if you have representation to help you negotiate screening fees, which is very specific. So if you have like a social impact film, there is a group called the Film Collaborative that can help secure screening fees for your film. That's what we did with Chasing Amy. Chasing Amy's first profitable window was during our festival run, which is highly unlikely because most of the time it's a major cost is to do the travel, to get to do festival deliverables, et cetera, et cetera. So your first window is probably going to be film festivals and or public screenings to some degree. Your next phase, you're probably going to be moving in to either, and it just depends. Sometimes that's theatrical. If you're trying to do a theatrical run of the movie, this is all assuming you have a feature film, by the way. If you have a feature film, your theatrical window, if you're going to play in movie theaters, that's probably going to be your next window. And that can be very cost intensive because you are making DCPs and then sending them out to theaters. Ideally, those theaters are paying you you're probably paying a booking fee to get booked, and then you're probably doing you're doing a box office share, right? So the process of theatrical is like talking to bookers all the time, or your distributor is doing this for you, where you're trying to figure out where can the movie play. And sometimes they're not going to play it during your theatrical window. Sometimes they're going to come back to you a year or two later and be like, hey, we would love to do a repertory screening of this. And that's an opportunity to make money. So you're going to do festivals, then you're going to do theatrical. Then probably you're going to do your transactional VOD window. That's called TVOD. TVOD is where you can rent a film on Amazon or YouTube or Fandango or something like that. Anytime you're paying the rental fee, that's your transactional VOD window, TVOD. And that is probably going to last for about 90 days, your transactional VOD window. And then you're probably going to do something where you can, and a lot of that's called like digital releasing, but another part of your digital releasing will also be your, probably your SVOD window. So probably after you go, and this order depends on what kind of film you have, but your SVOD window is for subscription video on demand. So that's your Netflixes, your Hulus, your Peacocks, anything that you are paying a subscription fee to watch something. If your film ends up on there, there's probably an exclusive window in which your film is on SVOD. Now, this is assuming you do not sell to a streamer, right? Streamers, SVOD, same thing. So if you sell to Netflix, you're probably not doing a transactional VOD window because they want you to be exclusive on Netflix. So then after your SVOD window, you'll probably go to AVOD, advertising-based video on demand. So that's your Tubies, your Reverie TVs, that kind of stuff. But who watches Tubi? God, I love Tubi. It's free. You just got to watch something with ads, and you can access so many interesting cult movies. So right now, Chasing Amy is available on TVOD, AVOD, and I think SVOD. Yeah, because we're on Amazon Prime. So we're available in all three windows now. By the time that you're releasing your film digitally, you ideally want to be in one of those windows. Then you also have television rights, okay? So let's say you have a documentary and it plays on PBS. You're probably going to do your television window before you do your transactional VOD window. So there's also educational rights, okay? Who here has a library card? Gosh, if you don't, I know a great place where you can go get one. Support your local library. Part of your distribution rights also includes educational distribution. So that includes your Hooplas, your Canopies. Who watches movies on Canopy? Canopy and Tubi, my two favorite streaming services, okay? Canopy is great for educational distribution, basically meaning that your library or higher educational institutions, they are paying for you to have access through your access to that institution, so in this case, your library card, to be able to watch so many movies for free, thousands of movies for free. So Chasing Amy is on there too, along with like films I've never heard of from all around the world, Best Picture winners, etc. And so you can watch all kinds of movies on Canopy. Having your educational window for distribution is going to be incredibly valuable to getting you out to new audiences. True cinephiles love Canopy. They love Tubi. These are two great places for people to discover movies. So often a distributor will help you get on those platforms, to get on those aggregators, to help negotiate those deals, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to use them for that, though I will say Canopy, I believe, is a service that goes through distributors to get access to those films. So I do think you need a traditional distributor to some degree to get on Canopy. That's been my experience. But those are the different types of windows. You have to be very specific with what your goals are for your film to see in which order you do each thing. So that's, I think, a good place to start with your question. And then, was there a second part that I missed? Oh, okay. So all of the things that you need to get to your distributor, it's called a list called deliverables. Deliverables can be a nightmare because usually a lot of filmmakers are doing it at the end. So this is all of your release forms. This is your chain of title, which is going through the U.S. Basically, you're getting the U.S. Copyright Office to confirm that this is a thing that you made. And then you're putting together this entire document package called chain of title with all of your releases, with your copyright information, with your dialogue list, with everything that would possibly be needed for a film to be accessible to an audience who is watching. So you'll probably have to get your subtitles here. Or not your subtitles, your captions. And then if you're gonna, depending on your distributor, you might have to get subtitles in different languages, etc. This is where things get really expensive because you're also mastering the film and then delivering it out to the distributor in a final way. So you're probably paying the post-production professional who is editing the movie or delivering the movie to go ahead and do that, to add in bumpers, to make sure your credits are right. You'll have to have all of your credits written out. And so in the distribution playbook, there's a list of very common deliverables that will be needed. I highly recommend taking a look at that and then figuring out okay, who's responsible for this? Oftentimes it will be you. I cannot tell you how many nights I stayed up, even with the very reasonable deliverables list that Chasing Amy had, but I was the one doing so much of it that wasn't delivering the actual movie. I was doing a lot of the legal paperwork. I was making sure our releases were all in the chain of title. I was the one conferring with our production attorney to make sure that the chain of title was correct. And so another part of your deliverables list will also be working with your production attorney and making sure that everything is buttoned up in that way too. So it can be expensive. Don't let it intimidate you. You just got to budget for it ahead of time so that you can be realistic when you're asking people for money or when you're going out and you are raising money to be able to confidently say, this is how much it's going to cost for this phase of the movie, and then stick to your budget. Great question. Give it up for her. What else?
Could you talk a little bit more about talking to people about money?
Yeah. Great question. How do you talk to different types of people about money? So in any conversation, I try to just approach it as open as possible because I am not there for a specific purpose other than to meet people. Even if I'm going into a room full of people who are investors, I'm not expecting that any single one of them is going to give me money because then I will be sad and disappointed when they don't. Anytime I have ever received money, it's always felt like a pleasant surprise, and I've never had to ask specifically somebody for money in that way. And you might be like, Sav, what do you mean? Aren't you crowdfunding right now? Aren't you sending direct emails to people asking if they'd support? Sure. I'm talking about big money. I'm talking about people with Amex Black cards who have a lot of money to burn, so to speak. And they don't. They treat their money very preciously, which is how they have enough money for an Amex Black card. So what I always go into a situation is just try to get to know somebody. Treat them as a person, not like a means to an end. And just in the same way that if you're networking in this room, you're probably not going to expect anybody to give you money, but if you make a friend out of it, oh, that'd be nice. If you make a professional connection that can help get you a little further along, that would be nice. That's a great outcome to hope for, but you can't expect it, right? And so whenever I go into situations, I'm always just trying to get to know people. But our biggest funder on Chasing Amy was I went to the Missouri Film Meetup in New York City when I lived there. And I almost didn't go because I was exhausted because I was working in the TED office till 10 p.m. every night. And I was like, no, I should go. The film office has always been so supportive of me. And so I went. And it was the Kansas City Film Commissioner and the Missouri Film Commissioner there. They were throwing this party in New York. And I was just there to meet people. And I was like, great. And there was a guy in the corner. And he was just eating his food and he wasn't talking to anybody. And he had a cool hat on. And I went up to him and I said, hey, I like your hat. I'm a guy who wears hats too. Something to talk about. And he was like, who is this child talking to me right now? And so we just became friends. And he invited me to come do a pitch session at his office. And he's like, look, I don't have any money to give you for this Chasing Amy documentary, but I like you. Let's stay in touch. And then years later, I was speaking at South by Southwest, and I posted about it. And that was the thing that got him to reach out to be like, hey, by the way, do you still need funding for this movie? And it started small, relatively speaking, in terms of the budget. He ended up putting almost all of the budget that we needed in for post-production, because he had a post-production company. And so he's like, hey, we can get you over the finish line for this. I really believe in this project. And it was just building rapport and friendship over time with this guy. I had no expectations, but I was very pleasantly surprised. And so that's the biggest thing that I've learned anytime I've been able to get like big money like that is I just go in, I try to be friendly, I try to be the kind of person that I would want to work with, and also consider what's the kind of person that they want to work with. And then when the time comes, when they ask about money, I know my talking points. I know why I'm there. I know what it's going to afford us, why I give a shit, why I'm the person to finish the job, and why they should trust me with their hard-earned resources. But like, I'm never like angling, you know. Yeah, I mean, everything is relationship building at the end of the day, right? Like, you know, if somebody comes up to me after this and they're just like, hey, Sav, it was great to meet you. And I see you like 10 times in like, you know, at the next 10 events that are in town. And that's our rapport. And then one day somebody comes up to me and says like, hey, like, I know somebody who I think would be a good fit for this project. And every time you've seen me, I've been kind and polite and the kind of person that you would want to be around. You might be comfortable introducing me to that person, right? And vice versa. That's kind of, it's odd to, I didn't know getting into this business how much of it was just like being a good hang, but like that's so much of it. And so, you know, and also being like very specific about when you do ask for support and like when you ask for support, are you asking in a way that makes people feel okay about it, right? Like I've been doing a lot of direct outreach for this crowdfunding campaign. And I always end my outreach emails being like, hey, let me know how I can support you and the work that you have going on. And then when somebody asks me then for support, I deliver on it. So like I've got a couple of emails sitting in my inbox that I need to answer where it's like, okay, like thank you for supporting this campaign. You're asking for support back. Great, I got you. I will try to introduce you to this person. I will try to like give you information that I think could be helpful for you for your campaign. You're building a reciprocal ecosystem all the time and not expecting anything back. And I think that has been what's so helpful for me in terms of raising money. And I think that's a terrific question. Did I answer it? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Great question. Give it up.
Do you have any suggestions on like ways I can like reach out to people through like socials and all that stuff? Because we have like an Instagram for our film that, and I'm just trying to like figure out like what it's a follow up to pretty much what you guys were talking about.
Yeah. So how can you go back to your network to raise more money after a crowdfunding period has ended? I would say do something a little different, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, would you say most of your audience is based here in Vegas?
It's all over, actually. It's all over the country. Like we're actually filming in California. Wow.
So what I'm angling at is, can you do an in-person event that's low overhead, that utilizes your talent, right? If people are excited about her, can you do like a silent auction somewhere, right? Where like she signs something that people want, like whether it's from a previous movie that she's done, a prop or something that would get people excited where they would like do bidding on it. Could you do like a little fundraiser where there's like a, you know, admission at the door or a suggested, you know, contribution when people enter? And can you make it fun for them? Because that's the biggest thing about fundraising, I would say, is like the trade-off is you have to make it fun for the people, right? And so, you know, there's a lot of people who are backing Pancake Skank because like they're just like excited about the cast, or they're excited about Lily Wachowski, or they're excited that I have a new film because they love Chasing Amy or something like that. Or they really like the merch that we designed, right? Like, you know, we figured that people would buy a hat or a t-shirt that said Pancake Skank irrespective if there was a movie about it. And so far we're right. You know, and so it's about how can you make it super fun for them. And so for you, I would take a look at the resources that you have. And it sounds like you have an actor who people are excited about. So can you leverage her celebrity to then raise more money off of that? Indie short films, see, here's the thing, is like I can't give a like one-size-fits-all specific budget for a short film because like I'm making an indie short film that costs $75,000 right now. And it's because I'm trying to pay everybody for 5 days of labor. It's very action intensive. We've got some name talent I'm really excited by, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things that drive up the price for this film, especially because it's sci-fi, but we have to shoot on location in a bunch of diners. So like, That's the high end of things, right? And then, you've got your like micro budgets where it's like, $1,000 feels very expensive. And so for you, I would take a look at like, what's your budget? How many people do you realistically need to shoot it? Can you do it with a crew of 3 people well, right? Can you have somebody who, can pre-light an apartment? Can you make one room feel huge? It just depends on what you are trying to make. And how much you can compensate everybody for their time. So that's what I would say, but there's a lot of really great budgeting tools out there. If you send me an email after this, because if you scan the QR code, which I'll put that back up on the screen, if you scan the QR code to get the deck, I will email you this deck probably tomorrow. And then if you have any follow-up questions about specifically budgeting, I'm happy to send over some resources that have been helpful for me. But it's just about what is your film and what does it actually need? Do we have any other questions before we go? I think this is a great place to end, y'all. Thank you so much. We're going to turn it back over to the film.